Welcome to Hilary Topper On Air, the podcast you can't afford to miss.
Have you ever thought about writing a memoir? Do you have a story to tell, but you're too afraid because you're not well known? Memoirs like Becoming Michelle Obama sell well because readers are hungry for stories that inspire and or take place in exotic places and times. But you don't need to be famous to write a memoir. I'm Hilary Topper, and this is Hilary Topper On Air. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Peter J. Pollak, who is the author and owner of Expendable Man Publishing, and he's going to talk to us all about memoirs. And without further ado, Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So can you remind our listeners about Expendable Man Publishing and tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Sure. Well, I started Expendable Man Publishing when I published my first indie novel back in 2011 after retiring from a career where I was a journalist, an educator, and an entrepreneur. And when I retired, I had these ideas for novels, and I decided to give it a try. And I'm getting my seventh has come out. My seventh came out late in 2019.
Awesome! Congratulations.
Thank you.
So let's talk about memoirs. So every year, another type of memoir is being published. The life story of people who are not famous yet, who want to share the difficult road they've traveled. Tara Westover's highly regarded educator, educated is case in point. So why and when should someone write a memoir?
Well, that's a very good question. It used to be that you would wait until the last years of your life and to sum things up and leave some record for your family. But now people are writing memoirs much earlier, and that brings up to the point that a memoir is different from an autobiography. An autobiography tends to be, again, end of life story, the told story, your family background, youth, et cetera, et cetera. A memoir can just be a slice of your life. So people in their 20s are writing memoirs about difficult teen years, or people are writing memoirs as parents about raising, handicapped children, or about difficult marriages. So it doesn't have to be something that you wait to the last years of your life to do.
That's so interesting. And so tell us a little bit more about a book that you are writing, a memoir that you are writing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. My memoir is called Left to Right. And when I was in my 20s, I was very active in the anti-war movement and civil rights, and, got into, student movements and so forth. So I was, really on the left side of the spectrum. But as I, continued to live my life and deal with the issues that, people deal with family and work and so forth, I found my views, moving further to the right. And today I consider myself a conservative. So this was something that a lot of people didn't understand. So I felt I needed to write a memoir that explained that process. So it's not a biography, an autobiography. It's just about my political movement from left to right.
Interesting. So back to trying to talk a little bit about memoirs that someone out there might want to write. Typically, they're quite lengthy. Do memoirs have to be lengthy, or is there a specific size that they should be in terms of text?
Well, that's, it depends on whether you're going to try to get it published by a mainstream publisher. This last week, the Washington Post published its annual issue in the life section about books. And of the 50 best nonfiction books, 11 are memoirs. And not one of them is a memoir of a famous person.
Interesting.
So some stories are so compelling that you can get a mainstream publisher to publish your story. And you mentioned Tara Westover's Educated, which is, again, a case in point. But that's not the only kind of memoir. A memoir could be something that is just written for your friends and family, something that might be 50 pages or 100 pages that deals with a topic that you want to, bring to light or leave a record. You may have photos that you want to include, and that today, photos, old photos, it's hard to know what to do with them. So you can create a memoir of your youth or a period in your life or an adventure or trip or whatever. It doesn't have to be long to be worth publishing, and it's very easy to indie publish these days and to get the photos and everything lined up properly. It's something that is doable.
So let's talk a little bit about the writing process, right? So when is the best time to write a memoir? What time of the day? And also, do you have any kind of tips that you can offer to get started and how to outline this?
Sure. I think when someone wants to write a memoir is when there's something about their past that is they want to get off their chest. And so it can be at any point in time when you say, I've been, worrying about this, my time in college, and, I flunked out and I went here and there, and then I finally found my way. I'd like to explain that. Mm-hmm. So whenever something is bothering you or, you keep thinking of, that's the time that you should think about it, because it can be therapeutic to get it out there, to deal with it, and to share it with people who you care about and who care about you. As far as when to write, obviously it depends on your personal situation. I have when I was working on my novels, I learned the hard way by making lots of mistakes. So I wrote a pamphlet, 10 Things You Need to Know to Write a Novel. And now that I've just finished my memoir, I've got another pamphlet, 10 Things You Need to Know to Write a Memoir. And in that, I offer some tips to help people make progress, because it can be a daunting process, and especially if you're not a professional writer. Sometimes you need a little structure, a little help. So that's why I've published this second pamphlet to help people get over some of these process issues and make progress in their writing.
Does it make a difference whether you are indie published or published by a traditional publisher?
Well, sure, of course it makes a difference. If you start out not sure which way you want to go, I would aim for the stars, shoot as high as you can and see what happens. You want to complete your memoir before you contact agents or publishers, and let them tell you whether your story is worth being put out there by a mainstream press with all the publicity and so forth and available in bookstores, or whether it's something that's really not going to, sell. It's not going to be publishable, but you can do it yourself, again, for friends and family.
So how do you go about doing that? I mean, how do you find a book agent or publishers to contact? And then what's the process to actually pitch them?
Sure, those are good questions, and ones that I'm sure a lot of people are struggling with, because there's not just one way to do it. I recommend that people get involved in a writers association. I think almost every state has a state writers association where they have meetings and they have writing groups that you can join, and they have sessions with speakers and so forth. So I think that's a good way to kind of get your feet wet and see what's going on. Eventually, some of these groups, I know I'm in Maryland, so we have every year a conference, and the agents come to the conference, and you get a chance to pitch to them and say, I've got this memoir, and here's what it's about. And they'll say, well, sure, send me the first 20 pages. I'd like to take a look. Or they say, no, it doesn't appeal to me. Another way to do it is there's something called Query Tracker, where you can go online, and I think that it's very reasonable, $50 or $60 to join, and you can search on agents who are interested in memoirs. Because the one thing you want to be sure to do is not pitch an agent who's only interested in romance or something like that. You know, you want to find an agent who considers memoir one of the areas that they're looking for writers.
Interesting. So you have this pamphlet, and where could people find this pamphlet or get it?
All my work is published on Amazon. My 7 novels, the 2 pamphlets, and the memoir are all available on Amazon under my name, Peter G. Pollak, Pollak, no C in the last name.
So Peter, how did you get involved? How did you get interested in memoir writing?
Well, a few years ago, while I was running a critique group for the Maryland Writers Association, we had an opening, and a elderly woman came in and said she's working on a memoir, and could she join? And so we were all novel writers, but we said, sure, come on in. And it was very intriguing to see the process. She was born in Hungary before the First World War, and she lived through the war, and she lived through the communist period and escaped Hungary in 1956. So her story was really compelling. Her granddaughter had asked her to write about it, and it was a difficult process for her, but it was so inspiring to see her work at it that I really got more and more interested in memoir writing, and that kind of, kicked me going and saying, well, why, if she can do it, why don't I tell my story as well?
It's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. You know about writing a memoir, and that's available on Amazon, and you have all of these books on Amazon as well. So go check it out. Peter Pollak, and he's our guest today on the show, and I want to thank you so much for being here. I also want to thank our sponsors, the Russo Law Group, Strain Print, The Profit Express, and Fortune Fine Jewelry. And last but not least, I want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. If you want more information on this show or any other show, visit our website at hilarytopperonair.com, or you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and now we're on Amazon Alexa. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.